Hello everyone, and thanks for watching Edupedia World videos. I am Manish Agrawal, and in this session we are starting with a new topic, a new chapter called Chemical Equilibrium. So once again we will be dealing with the syllabus of grade 11th as per the CBSE board. Okay, and you must know that in your NCERT textbook this chapter has been given with the name Equilibrium, and it encompasses both chemical equilibrium as well as ionic equilibrium, okay, in that one chapter. But here, okay, in the Edupedia World videos we will be dealing with these chapters, okay, as two different sections completely, okay, and right now we are only focusing on chemical equilibrium. Once we are done with that, we'll take ionic equilibrium as a completely new, a separate chapter. Alright, so let's begin with the topic of chemical equilibrium. So in this particular session we won't actually study, okay, a new concept or a new theory. I just want to tell you about all the topics that we'll be covering, okay, in this chapter over here. So we'll start with the difference between reversible and irreversible reactions, okay, or processes. So why am I saying reactions or processes? Because we might have chemical reactions here, or we might also have physical processes. Okay, so it's not necessary that always on the left hand side you will have a reactant which is different from the right hand side, that is product, okay, in terms of chemical composition. It might be that the physical state of your left and right hand side is different. That is, what we are dealing with here might not be a chemical reaction, instead it might simply be a change in physical state like evaporation. Okay, so we'll be dealing with reversibility and irreversibility of both chemical processes as well as physical processes in this chapter. Okay, and once we study that, in fact the first session of this chapter will deal with that, you will understand what all I was just telling you a minute ago. Okay, so until then don't worry about it. Let's just see the next topic that we'll deal in this chapter is the equilibrium itself, the meaning of equilibrium and all the characteristics. Okay, so how do we define equilibrium, what conditions characterizes the state of equilibrium. Okay, alright, so we'll understand all that, and once we do that we'll move on to the mathematical analysis of equilibrium. So once we have understood what equilibrium means, we'll try and formulate a mathematical equation, okay, or a mathematical constant which can help us analyze the state of equilibrium or help us define the state of equilibrium itself. Okay, and that mathematical tool will be something called equilibrium constant. Okay, so we'll use the value of K equilibrium to define, okay, or characterize the meaning of the term equilibrium in our chemical reactions especially, but we can also do that for physical processes. Okay. So after this, once we have done that, we'll move on to the properties of K equilibrium. Okay, that is the different kinds of K equilibrium constants which we can have, like Kp and Kc. Then we will also look at the various mathematical, okay, changes in K equilibriums, alright, as we change the reactions or stoichiometries of the reactions and so on. We'll also learn how to calculate K equilibrium, okay, in various numerical questions, and this will be the most difficult part in this chapter. Okay, rest everything is pretty easy, pretty simple, but mathematical formulation and mathematical calculation of K equilibrium in different questions, okay, and in different ways will be a bit tricky. Okay, so we'll spend quite a good amount of time over there, and we'll look at a lot of numerical questions and numerical examples to learn how to do that. Reaction quotient, which is represented by capital Q, and once we do that we'll move on to the application of equilibrium constant, that is what, okay, and how can K equilibrium and reaction quotient Q be actually used. Okay, how can we, for example, determine the direction of a reaction using the values of Q and K equilibrium. Then we'll finally start with the heterogeneous equilibrium. Okay, so in the starting we'll only deal with something called homogeneous equilibrium. Okay, and I'll explain to you later on what they mean, what does homogeneous equilibrium mean and what does heterogeneous equilibrium mean, but it is pretty simple. Okay, if you want to know, then homogeneous equilibrium are simply equilibriums or the reactions in which every reactant and every product, that is every component, has the same physical state. Okay, whereas in a heterogeneous equilibrium, every reactant and product might not have the same physical state. That is, at least one of them will have a different physical state. All of your reactants, if they are solid, then they are solids of different densities. Okay, or if your reactant and product are both solids, then they are solids of different densities. Even in that case, it is called a heterogeneous equilibrium. We'll look into them in greater detail when we study it. Okay, so once we are done with that, we are coming towards the end of the chapter, and that will be factors affecting equilibrium, which we study as per Chatelier's principle. So that principle is pretty simple, but it is also immensely important. Okay, you constantly get questions in your school exams as well as in JEE mains exams based on Chatelier's principle. Okay, but if you are able to study it, it is a very simple topic and a very scoring one, so you might want to focus on it a lot. Okay, so once we do that, we'll look at the thermodynamics of equilibrium, which shouldn't take much time. We just have to look at the basics of the thermodynamics of equilibrium. Okay, just a few equations over here, and we won't go into much detail. Okay, we won't go into more detail than what is given in your NCERT textbook. And lastly, the last topic that we'll deal with will be physical equilibria. Equilibria is just plural of equilibrium. So basically we'll study the equilibrium in physical processes at the end. So in the starting, everything that we study will be done for chemical reactions. Okay, that is chemical processes. And then at the end, we will look at the equilibrium of physical processes and how can we affect changes in a physical process. Alright, so this is all that we have to cover in this topic. So do remember that it is a very simple chapter, okay, and a very scoring one, and you pretty much get one question, okay, at least one question every year. Alright, in both JEE mains and a lot of times even in JEE advanced based on the topic of chemical equilibrium. Okay, and this is the scoring part. Alright, in the whole chapter there is only one section which might be difficult, which is the mathematical calculation of K equilibrium. Otherwise everything is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You just have to practice, okay, and clarify, okay, your doubts. Once you do that, this chapter is one of the most scoring one. Okay, so in the next session we'll start with the theory and as well as mathematical formulation. So until next time, and once again, thanks for watching Edupedia World videos.